All right, Sierra Leone decides 2023. Now, as the cornerstone of the nation's democracy, Parliament plays a crucial role in shaping the laws and policies that affect citizens' daily lives. It is therefore important that we take a critical look at the performance of this institution over the past 5 years. One of the key functions of Parliament is to make laws that reflect the needs and aspirations of the people. Over the past 5 years, Parliament has passed several important pieces of legislation, including the death penalty, the expulsion of the criminal libel law, the Jewy Act. These laws have had a significant impact on the governance of the state. However, there have also been concerns about the quality of legislation that have been passed. Some have argued that some of the bills have been rushed through without proper scrutiny and that there has been a lack of meaningful debate and discussion on important issues. Another important function of Parliament is to hold the government accountable. Over the past 5 years, Parliament has played little or no active role in scrutinizing the actions of the government. There have been concerns about the effectiveness of parliamentary oversight. Some have argued that Parliament has not done enough to hold the government accountable on issues such as corruption, the environment, and human rights. Parliament is also responsible for representing the diversity of the country. Over the past 5 years, there have been several important debates and discussions on issues such as reservation, the status of women, and the rights of minorities. These debates have helped to bring important issues to the forefront and ensure that the voices of all sections of society are heard. However, there have also been concerns about the quality of representation, with some members not debating, some absenting themselves, and others as cheerleaders, according to the Institute for Governance Reform report. The past 5 years have seen both achievements and challenges for Parliament. While there have been some notable successes, there is also room for improvement in several areas. Tonight, it is important that we take a critical look into the situation as Parliament continues to evolve and adapt to the changing needs of the country, and that it remains committed to the principles of democracy, accountability, and representation. My name is Samuel Wise-Bangura, and this is AYV on Sunday. All right, good evening and a very warm welcome to AYV on Sunday here on AYV Television, on Channel 33, on DSTV Channel 399, on Radio FM 101.7, and on all our different social media platforms. Today we're assessing the performance of Parliament in the last 5 years. As always, you can be part of our conversation. We always enjoy the privilege of your time. Share your thoughts, ask your questions with us on the AYV News Facebook page. But please, we're making a plea. Tailor your comments to the issues being discussed, and let us speak on the issues. No personality attack, no message that would threaten our peace and stability. Here with me, as always, I have a star-studded panel of people who are in touch with the issues, people who should help me unpack the conversation for the next 2 hours and shape it. I have from the opposition All People's Congress Party, Honorable Alpha Amadou Ba. Good evening and welcome to the show, Honorable.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having me at the studio.
I have from the ruling Sierra Leone People's Party, the Honorable Ibrahim Tawa Conte. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Samuel. Thank you.
All right, we wait the arrival of lawyer Rashid Dumbuya, Executive Director for Legal Link, and lawyer Ibrahim Tomi, Executive Director for Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law, and as we go on with the conversation. But just before we get into this conversation, and as also we need to allow those on the panel at the moment to do what's needful. This is Ramadan, they are fasting. Let me just run through a press release from the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists. And it reads, press release dated Sunday, 9th April, 2023. And SLJA condemns killing of policeman, concerns about general safety and security. That's the subject of the press release, and it reads, the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists, SLJA, condemns the killing of police officer, Assistant Superintendent of Police, Matthew Moiwa Banya, on Saturday night, 8th April 2023, in the northern headquarter town of Makeni, and is concerned about the safety and security of everybody working and living in the country. As we head into public elections, on 24th June 2023. Reports of such an unlawful killing is totally unacceptable and puts the entire nation in a state of fear and uncertainty. This is a very worrisome situation developing in our country. If police officers become targets, then nobody is safe in this country. I am also concerned about the safety and security of journalists covering the elections. We all need a safe and conducive environment to participate freely in the elections, said SLJA President Ahmed Saeed Nasrallah. SLJA also notes with further concern the report today by the Sierra Leone police of the alleged shooting of a commercial motorbike rider at Manokona Lompa, Waterloo. Police found a shotgun, cartridges, super glue, and quantity of face masks at the crime scene. There seems to be a proliferation of arms and ammunition in the wrong hands. SLJA calls on the SLP to swiftly, thoroughly, and impartially investigate the incidents and bring the alleged culprits to answer to the law. SLJA equally condemns the spreading of messages of incitement promoting hate, division, and violence, and appeals to the public, especially supporters of political parties and journalists at home and abroad, to refrain from disseminating speculative and unsubstantiated information to the general public. To the gullible public, I beg your pardon. Journalists, especially those working in McKinney, can help the police with reliable information that will lead to the arrest of whoever is or are responsible. Signed, Alhaji Manika Kamara, National Secretary General for SLJA. Right, that's the press release from the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists condemning the killing of the Assistant Superintendent of Police there, Banya, and also an alleged shooting of a commercial motorbike rider in Waterloo. Calling on members of the public and us media practitioners to stop spreading messages that would incite chaos. All right, welcome back. The show is AYV on Sunday, and tonight we're assessing the Parliament of Sierra Leone over the last 5 years. We're looking at the highs and the lows. We're looking at 3 constitutional mandates of the Parliament: lawmaking, oversight, and representation. And like I introduced earlier, I have Honorable Alpha Amadou Ba from the Opposition All People's Congress Party. I have Honorable Tawa Conte from the ruling Sierra Leone People's Party, and I've just been joined in the studio by lawyer Rashid Dumbuya, who is the Executive Director for Legal Income. Rashid, good evening and welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. I'm grateful.
All right, and Ibrahim Tommy is yet to join us, but we have to move on. So let's start off with an insider perspective of Parliament in the last 5 years. Just having a precursory remark. Just a brief look at Parliament. I'll start off with you, Honorable Alpha Ba. How would you describe your house over the last 5 years?
And thank you so much, and Samuel. Indeed, as you've rightly stated in your introductory statement, Parliament is the cornerstone of democracy and good governance. To my mind, I would want to say Parliament over the 5 years is one of a mixed impression. We have the good, the bad, and the ugly. So in all of these, we have instances of where we've gotten it right, that is to say the road taken, and then in some instances we would have had the road not to have been taken, and then we look forward. So far, it's a mixed impression.
Honorable Tawa, how would you describe your house over the last 5 years?
As a tenant of the people, it is difficult not to enjoy and feel at home for the period for which we are given a mandate. We have a mandate for 5 years, and as God could have it in one piece, we are ending that mandate on the 25th of April, 2023. So far, so good. Since 25th April 2018 to the closing 2 weeks or so, I think it has been a parliament full of activities, not short of news, not short of making history, not short of doing things that sometimes would not only catch the eye of the nation, but goes beyond the borders of Sierra Leone. We've been a parliament that has made significant history in terms of changing and transforming some critical legislations. We've also been a parliament that started with like 80% of new members of parliament with little or no experience on how parliament works, what obtains in parliament. But it's no excuse, because for whatever you do, whatever job you get yourself into, you must be prepared. You must get yourself ready for the job. So, but notwithstanding those shortcomings, it has been, for me, largely a parliament that has surpassed the expectation of Sierra Leoneans, because most Sierra Leoneans, most pundits were not as sure as to what would be the outcome of a hung parliament. Let's not forget that we have a parliament where no party has majority, where the ruling party is almost in a minority because of the number of seats, where we have patrons, we have 14 paramount chief members of parliament coming from across all 14 districts in Sierra Leone. And we know what obtains in that parliament. It's been a tumultuous 5 years. It's been a 5 years, not short of drama, but it's been a 5 years where we can count ourselves as those people that came, saw, and indeed we have conquered.
All right. Let me just quickly welcome the Executive Director for Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law, Ibrahim Tommy. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us under such difficult circumstances. Thank you. Lawyer Rashid, let me hear from you your precursory remark on your assessment of Parliament. You know, when the elections were concluded in 2018, many said the results were fascinating, owing to the fact that the constitution of Parliament, the coloration of Parliament, it brought hope. But over the last 5 years, where would you put those expectations?
Thank you very much, Sir Samuel. I want to call you Vakas.
It's okay. I have Bakaras.
You have a way of bringing us together on topical issues, and I'm grateful for the invitation always. The topic is timely. It's the need of the moment, especially having seen a couple of days ago some surreptitious act of members of parliament trying to pass, a bill that enriched themselves, and the quick overturn or withdrawal of same. So it brought them to the spotlight again, and it's important that we are having this discussion to perhaps assess them as their tenure elapse away. So let me, in some as my precursory remarks, describe their tenure as being dramatic, shocking, and with mixed outcomes, with the bad and ugly overshadowing the good. So maybe that's I hope I will have time to discuss and put them into context. Because I will not sit here and say there have never been some good things in the five years tenure, but largely the bad and the ugly, to borrow the words of my honorable there, describing the bad, good, and ugly. The bad and the ugly has really overshadowed the good. And to me, it's really something we must talk about and hope that the next parliament coming, some of this indelible wrong footprints that they've left behind will not be passed on. It's a shame, and it's disappointing. People who expect much from, see them having fist fights, abusing themselves, bringing themselves to shame and disgrace to the public gaze, and all of that. So I'm sure we have time to talk about all of these things and put them into context. And ending also in a weaker note, perhaps in terms of trying to pass surreptitiously a law which ought to have been genuinely, discussed. Nobody is saying don't pass a law to, empower yourselves. But why are you hiding it? Why are you bringing it at the last end when we are thinking of other issues now? Elections all over the place. What were you hiding? you know. So it's good that they decided to get it back, and I hope some of these things will be lessons learned going forward. So in some, you know, as an opening remarks, it has been dramatic, shocking, with mixed outcomes, with the bad and the ugly overshadowing the good.
All right. Let's hear from Lawyer Tommy on his take. Just a brief overview of what's your take on Parliament.
This is how I look at it. Parliament essentially has three core functions. There's a legislative, there's the oversight, and perhaps you can add the constituency mobilization or engagement function of Parliament. I think clearly there's no doubt that they did extremely well, or have done extremely well, because they still have at least 2 weeks to go in terms of lawmaking, the legislative. They've made some really progressive laws, repealed the criminal libel law, they've repealed the death penalty, the GWI Act. They've really made progressive laws. It's been one of the most productive parliaments when it comes to lawmaking, no doubt about that. On the issue of oversight, that's where some questions need to be asked, because I don't think they have done well in terms of holding MDs to account. We've seen some audit reports that have not been discussed and effective action being taken. In terms of community engagement, constituency engagement, that's also a problem in the sense that they have not had, I'm sure they would argue, they have not had the benefit of the resources in there to make that engagement happen. And in fact, when you talk to the everyday person about his or her view on Parliament, they give a very dim view of Parliament, because of really there's this knowledge gap in terms of what the legal constitutional role of Parliament is versus the expectations of the public from parliamentarians. So that is where I think civil society, we are failing the people, and to some extent even Parliament, in terms of making sure that that engagement, that knowledge is established among members of the public. So on those three issues, there's clearly one that I can give them a pass, and you have to commend the bipartisanship on especially some of those progressive laws. Maybe it's because it was, or it is the home parliament, but I have really seen bipartisanship on some of the most progressive laws, and that's something that we should commend. But I hope that in the future, if the two honorable members of parliament come back, and I wish them well, they have to do a lot more in terms of making sure that there is more parliamentary oversight of what MDAs do, and perhaps push for more resources to ensure that they are engaging more actively with their constituencies. But one final thing on the drama, we also saw a lot of dramatic scenes from the one through the fist fight and the cursing at the makeshift parliamentary sitting, all of that. Again, I would say in the life of parliament, you have to expect drama. Whether, I mean, I think they took it too far on occasions, but I hope that they learn from that, and we will address our differences, our disagreements in a more civil manner than in the way that we saw with all the cursing and the theft of the maize and things like that. But kudos to them, at least for the lawmaking aspect of it.
Right. So let's get to the details. We're going to start off with the issue of oversight.
Yes,
Honorable, because Lawyer Tommy just reiterated that the three constitutional mandates of you guys, you the members of parliament: oversight, representation, and lawmaking. So let's start off with oversight. Many people are not happy, and they feel at this point that the fifth parliament failed in that aspect. Going back in 2018, there was this news of parliament receiving funds for oversight functions, and none was performed by the House. The Institute for Governance Reform, Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law, a perception survey was also released that branded the House as the second most corrupt institution in the country. Some members of parliament also alluded to the corrupt nature of parliament and issues around that. There is also a concern of, there are funds. Parliament, they say, is the only institution that gets 100% of its budget including oversight, for oversight purposes. But Parliament committees go to MDAs, still collect monies for oversight. Now, let's talk about how do you view these claims and the issue of the audit reports not being debated. It's another concern and big issue for accountability. So where would you put oversight for the House, Honorable Bah?
First of all, let me just at least make some clarifications regarding what Lawyer Rashid Dumbe has just stated. That, well, for him, there has been a series of shocks, a series of drama, and then the ugly and the bad have actually outnumbered or outshadowed the good. Let us go back to the original meaning of the word parliament. The word is borrowed from a French terminology, parler. It means to talk. And the House of Parliament is purely meant to debate. And in a debate, you disagree to agree. So essentially, you will have to expect drama. As long as you have to exchange ideas, counter opinions, and whenever you exchange ideas and counter opinions, you're bound to get drama. So that's essentially the function of Parliament. Well, that's the nature of the trend. Then coming to the issue of oversight, for me, I see some institutional problem. You know, if you take a look at the relationship between the executive and the legislative arm, well, prior to now, you know, we used to have this cabinet system of government, whereby you must have been a member of Parliament before you are appointed a cabinet minister. And most times, if you are not appointed a cabinet minister, you are referred to as a backbencher. So whenever you're a backbencher, you always get your members of Parliament who are with you, even though they are ministers, you hold them accountable. Now, given our new constitution, the 1991 constitution, which forms the Second Republic, you would have had series of oversight activities. You would have had series of reports. And then we have so many powers indeed to recall government appointees who have been approved by Parliament. But when you come with those reports, you debate them and you make resolutions, it is for the executive arm to act upon those resolutions. So for me, we still have to look at the institutional arrangements. So far, insofar as our constitution is concerned, the relationship between the legislative arm and the executive arm. It is, for me, it has been a perennial problem since 1991. You always see the Parliament has been so vociferous, so active, so willing to get result. When once it is, we're done with it and you take it, you expect the executive arm to come on board, that is where you get the bottleneck. So far as oversight is concerned, yes, you get monies for oversight. Definitely, MPs will have to be transported to the location for oversight.
Right.
We'll have to take care of MPs. So these are not because we are MPs. It is because the activities have to be executed. So it is not saying paying us extra amounts rather than what we used to have, say, our
from
salary.
Parliament or from the MDAs?
No. It is from Parliament.
But MDAs, I mean,
That's not to my knowledge.
I'm aware
That's what you said.
I'm aware of a ministry that gave about 40 million only, and I have the documents to a committee.
I am saying, based on what I know and what I've experienced, never in my activities have I ever come to that.
Right.
Never realized that you're giving money. All I know, we go for oversight, we do our investigations. And the other thing again, there are times when we go on oversight, Parliament is purely meant to oversee ministries, departments, and agencies. But there are times Parliament overstretches its scope of authority. Say, for instance, for me, to my mind, we are not required to question Afisel, Airtel. You are bound to oversee the regulators.
Like NATCOM, you mean?
Exactly. So if you see something that is going wrong, that is being these corporate entities are responsible, you take the regulators on board. You take them. You ask them to account for that. But so there are times when you see private individuals come to Parliament and reduce Parliament to an adjudicating body. And Parliament shouldn't be an adjudicating body. There is a clear-cut distinction between adjudication and legislation. It is not a house of adjudication.
So Parliament goes overboard sometimes.
So there are times that's true. So we'll have to know the limits of the three basic functions of Parliament as against the limits of the executive arm. So that has been a systemic problem. It is not just as a result of the makeup of this Parliament. And people keep calling this Parliament a hung Parliament. Nominally, it is a hung Parliament. But essentially, is it a hung Parliament? I say no. We have all the PCMPs. They've never voted against any motion that is brought by the government, the government bench. So to my mind, yes, nominally it is a hung Parliament, but essentially, what's obtained on the ground, it is not a hung Parliament. Have you ever experienced a situation where you have a PCMP voting against the position of the governing party in Parliament? No. This is not the only situation. It is not only unique to this Parliament. Over the years, all PCMPs vote along the government's position. So for me...
So the executive and the legislature, in your submission, it appears there's no separation.
Well, there is no clear-cut rule between the executive and in terms of ensuring oversight. So there seems to be a lack of cooperation and a collaboration from the executive arm to the legislative arm in order to ensure that oversight...
Let's validate that. This Parliament promised question time.
Yes.
That, we're going to bring public servants, we're going to bring members from the executive so that we're able to scrutinize them. The public will be able to question them on things they've done. There are reports that have been commissioned in Parliament by committees to go, and those reports, some of them, have been brought back, but not been debated. So I'll take you to the Tar River report, for example, by the Mines and Minerals report.
There's a mixed impression. So amongst the mixed impression, this is one of the instances. Yes, indeed, there is bound to be questions. There are a series of questions that are laid, that are being kept in that house, that are yet to come to see the light of day. So it is for the speaker to ensure that it is for the clerk. And you know, so there are a series of questions. There are a series of questions that should be put to certain ministries, certain departments, certain agencies. So for me, these are the ugly and bad parts of Parliament. We are still looking forward to seeing a speaker or a clerk of Parliament or an administrative Parliament that seeks to be an administration that actually seeks the interest of the people and not a partisan administration. Because if you have questions, and for now, you know, I am an opposition MP. I'm an opposition MP. So if I have a question, then definitely it has to be directed to the existing MDAs. So the speaker is bound to ensure that that question, whether it suits him or not, whether it suits the ruling government or not, it must see the light of day.
Honorable Wentawa, the issue of oversight. The other day, I was talking to a friend, and he said if he was going to rate Parliament on oversight, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, he would give Parliament 3. So looking at some of the things that I've highlighted already, and Honorable Barr has spoken to, reports being commissioned, they've been brought back, no debate on them. There's a Tar River report that cost, citizens, some citizens their lives because of the pollution of the river, the oil and all of that, illegal mining. That report, the committee was championed by Honorable Emerson Lamina. The report came and no debate on it. The Auditor General, the audit reports, nothing. Question time promised, not delivered. You were going on oversight for a whole year. You did not perform a single oversight as an arm that deals with accountability, the Parliament. So where, with all of these things, where would Parliament raise its head?
Thank you very much, Samuel. Before going to the issue, let me first of all state clearly that as a Parliament, I have been chairman for 2 committees, the shortest serving chairman ever in Parliament. Anyway, I've been chairman for transparency. I think I served for 2 weeks. In the end, I had to resign. I was also chairman, I was my deputy. We started the Committee on Environment. I was the first chairman for the Committee on Environment when the President in 2019 pronounced the Ministry of Environment, and he was the first deputy chairman. We worked assiduously in trying to put the ministry together as a committee. We worked on structure and policy and legislative arrangement, because at the time when the ministry was pronounced, most of the agencies that were supposed to be under the ministry were under other ministries. For example, forestry was under the Ministry of Agriculture. You have nuclear safety and radiation was under the Ministry of Energy. We have the National Protected Area Authority was under the Ministry of Agriculture. So we had to bring all of that together. We went on a number of sensitization and engagement in the provinces, and we were able to produce a document that later translated into legislation. So that is a good piece of oversight function done by the Committee on Environment, because the outcome of those engagements led to the reenactment or repeal of the Environment Protection Agency Act. It led to the repeal and reenactment of the National Protected Area Authority Act. It led to the repeal and replacement of the Nuclear Safety and Radiation Authority. It led to the amendment of the Forestry Act of 1988, moving the Forestry Department from the Ministry of Agriculture to the Ministry of the Environment, as well as renaming the Director of Conservation to the Director of Forestry. So that is a very good bit of oversight work done by a committee that lasted, or for which we oversaw its activity for 6 months. Now, to the crux of the matter, that sometimes we collect monies from MD. Yes, we do. I cannot come to this place and sit in public, in a public media, and say, oh no, we don't. We do, because what we get and what Parliament receives as funds for oversight is not half what Parliament actually requires to perform an effective oversight. Let me tell you, before 2019, in 2018, I raised the flag that Parliament received a certain sum from the Ministry of Finance, as stated in the budget, that was meant for oversight, and no oversight was done. And that was the truth. I can't shy away from that. I cannot come sit here because, okay, oh, now everything is fine, or the leader of government business or other members of my party were in good terms. I cannot come and state the fact. The fact is the fact. Yeah. Now, if you give 40 million to one committee to go on oversight, a committee of 16 members, yeah, from that 40 million, that is where they are going to have accommodation. That is where their per diem is. So if you divide 40 million by 16, you have 2,500,000. I'm not sure, not even the layman on the road would go out for 4 or 5 days into a district or into a region or into the interior where you know nobody for 2,500,000. You cannot. So these are some of the risks that members of Parliament do take for and on behalf of the public to ensure that oversight is performed. Where I can fault Parliament, actually, for oversight, is the fact that when we go on oversight, we produce reports. Some committees produce reports. I cannot generalize. It's not all committees that produce reports. Some committees produce reports. Those reports are tabled. Those reports, sometimes they are debated. Sometimes they are tabled without a debate. And it is principally the core function of Section 93. 93 states that when an oversight committee presents a report to the plenary, it is the responsibility of the plenary to debate it, because the outcome of those debates and the outcome of those investigations sometimes will lead to legislation, like I have mentioned in the committee on environment. What we did, what were the outcomes, and what were the results. That is to say, yes, there was an activity, there was an outcome, and there was a result. Clearly stated. Now, if you come to look at what my brother said, that Parliament should not invite some other...
Just before you move on, let me ask this question. You said, you've accepted that committees do take money, do collect money from MDAs. And now, with the cliche, he who pays the piper dictates the tune. So let's talk about the credibility of those reports you've produced over time in Parliament. When, for example, if you're coming out to perform some function, oversight function, and I'm a company, and I've given you what Parliament has never given you as budget for oversight, I can influence the outcome of your investigation, correct?
It depends on integrity. You see, integrity is earned. If we say you're giving Parliament money, or you're supporting the oversight activity,
right,
and you expect the outcome to be in your favor, it depends on the integrity of the committee. Because, for example, I've led a committee before. I've led the third most important committee in Parliament. As a first-timer, the Committee on Transparency and Accountability, and everybody was seeing what I was doing. And what I wanted to do, if I become chairman again of that same committee, I'll do the same. I will still have committee hearing viewed live on television, so that the people of Sierra Leone will be part of what we do in Parliament. Yeah? Let us not misunderstand the fact that viewing committee hearing live will distort the fact or what you are going to do or the outcome. The budget is, Parliament owns the power of the purse.
Right.
It is Parliament that approves the budget. But it is not Parliament that utilize or disburse the budget. So the budget is disbursed by the executive. So by literal interpretation, it is whether you collect money from the MDAs or not, you receive money from the MDAs after all, because you receive money from the executive. Monies allocated to Parliament is disbursed by the Ministry of Finance. And those monies specifically meant for oversight, Parliament will have to write for it through their PET form and whatever, and those monies will be disbursed into the parliamentary account, and such monies are ascribed to committees to go and perform their functions. So the source of the funds does not dictate the outcome of the reports. Let me give you another classical example. We have two very highly respected civil society members here. I respect them, the public respect them. They receive monies from international bodies, but that does not limit them from performing their function, because they know whatever they receive it for a purpose. And the purpose is to come out with a report or come out with an outcome that can stand the test of time.
Isn't that a bit different? Because if they were collecting monies from the government of Sierra Leone, then we would have cited them as an example.
SLJA is receiving subvention from government. How many press releases have you seen from SLJA criticizing government since they started receiving subvention from government? It is where you stand at a particular point in time. I agree that he who plays the piper calls the tune, but the piper that is given to you, you have to manage it well. Now, inviting other agencies to Parliament, let's not forget that the same section 93 says, if you are dealing with anything that deals with public interest,
right,
you're of interest to Parliament. So if you are AfriCell, you are selling recharge card, you are selling data, and your call drop rate is as high as anything, it is of concern to Parliament, because when we sit in Parliament, we are representing not ourselves. That's why I started with the phrase that we are tenants of Parliament. The people that own their power, they will call us very soon. We have like 2 weeks, and we have to go back to them. It is not us that are going to present our report card to them. They have our report cards already. So for me, the power of Parliament in the performance of oversight, I agree. I cannot say Parliament would have 10 over 10 on oversight. Parliament would have an average mark on oversight, so 5, because
you pass.
You would have a 5. Why you would have a 5? Because 1, you are financially constrained, but in the midst of that financial constraint, you still make the effort. You still go beyond what you can do to ensure that you go on oversight and bring the report. Where Parliament's work, where Parliament's activity on this oversight, where Parliament will fail miserably, is the fact that when we go to the field, we bring those reports. It doesn't matter what's the content of the report. We must debate them, and we must ensure that those debates are meaningful to change the lives of the people of this country.
Mentioned that there's a problem with the leadership of Parliament, and the leadership is holding back on many things that should have led to effective accountability of the state. Reports not being debated, that's on the leadership of Parliament. Is that anything to go by?
The good thing is the leadership of Parliament is not one party. It is bipartisan. But the challenge is, I agree with him, that as a leadership, as Parliament, we are representing people. The people voted for us knowing our political belonging. But when we go there, like we do every day when we make laws, when we pass legislations, we expect the MDAs to collaborate. As Parliament, we must also see ourselves as partners in collaboration, because we must be bold enough as leadership to face the executive, principally the head of the executive, the president, engage him on good governance activities in Parliament. For example, the debate on the Auditor General's report, I will tell you today, tomorrow, and any day, it is because of the kind of information we are filtering to the executive or to people at the executive that, if you debate this, it will implicate government, it will make government look bad. Go to the Public Financial Management Act, section 27-28. It says the effective and efficient management of resources of the state is principally the responsibility of permanent secretaries. It's not in the hands of ministers. So if you're a permanent secretary, you allow yourself to be messed up by a minister. I'm not going to call the minister, I'm going to call the permanent secretary. So in the course of my investigation, if my investigation lead me to the minister, I'll bring in the minister. So the point is the leadership of parliament should be bold enough, regardless of their political background, to sit with the executive and tell them that this is our parliamentary agenda.
All right. Let me bring in Lawyer Rashid. You've listened to the politicians and the members of parliament, and they've given an insider view, an insider perspective of what is happening in parliament in terms of oversight. Now, from an onlooker position and having observed and monitored things happening there in terms of oversight, where would you put parliament with some of the things that they have submitted to us here this evening, and some of the issues I've highlighted in questioning them?
Yes, thank you very much. It's really tough to be a judge in your own cause. But I think they are making some inroads and making some true confessions. And let me zero into Tawa himself, because to me I see him as a testament of, perhaps as we critique Parliament, I mean, what exactly we've seen in these 5 years, how intolerant, I'll put it that way, Parliament has been in terms of accountability and transparency. He was fought. We all advocated for his case, for simply blowing the whistle, for simply standing up for something that was correct and accurate. A report was done by colleague CSOs, bringing out the issues. They made admissions himself and I think Honorable Gevao, and we saw, in fact, he lost his oversight position. And he was cowed and muzzled into silence till today.
And I'm told he's changed seats more than any.
Yeah. So I think I mean to describe the whole situation. I mean, he's here and he's a testament. Right. But then let me give a context to the debate proper. Let's start with perhaps what Parliament is all about. Parliament is about, the other name for Parliament is legislature. In case you're out there, you don't confuse the two, it's the same. And of course, there are many functions. I see us majoring on these three, but we have functions on also approval of appointees of the government, agreements, international agreements, budget approvals, impeachment of the president. Maybe sometimes they don't even know that they have that power. We have never seen such in this country being triggered. While Parliament has, in the Constitution, powers to impeach the president. All right? We see this happen in many jurisdictions. It's not fun. We've never seen that attempt, at the very least in our nation.
Has any situation warranted that?
Many situations.
Go ahead.
Because the Constitution is very clear. When a president violates the Constitution, it should be an issue of an impeachment. And that should be triggered. Whether it succeeds or not is another kettle of fish. But then Parliament ought to understand that they also have a duty in that respect. Now, it's a creature of the Constitution, and the powers are clearly spelled out. How you become one, how you are dismembered, all of them are said in chapter 6 of our Constitution. Now, let me, again, what I have done in my analysis, I've tried to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, to borrow what my colleague here, CSO, has said, I think they could have a pass largely in terms of making of laws. We've seen a lot of transformational legislations in this parliament, and that we should be proud to clearly echo. The Abolition of Death Penalty Act, for example, the repeal of the criminal libel law, it was done by this parliament. These are age-old issues that
would come to lawmaking. I just want us to focus on oversight at this point.
All right, okay, good. Yeah, so oversight, of course, in my assessment of oversight, one of the indictments, will be their failure, incessant and outright failure to debate the audit reports. You couldn't understand that. So that, in fact, has no monetary implications, because the two gentlemen here are talking about going to the field. Sometimes you can understand the monetary implication, but there were, issues of debating key reports before you. And one of such is the Auditor General's report, to let us know how the monies from the CRF fund have been expended, and to at the very least, give a platform for ACC and other people to come in, to at the very least give those monies back, or at least get something, being said about them.
Let's understand this, as you talk about the audit report. Let's understand this. Some members of parliament have advanced arguments that the audit reports should first be looked at the committee level. And others believe that no, it should be brought to the wider debate, and then you commission it to the committee. Yeah. But we've seen in SLJA's context, it is the Public Accounts Committee that will look and then see if it's okay. So you can go ahead.
It's subsection 5 of section 119.
Yes. I think the House should debate and then form a committee to now look at the issues there.
But it's the reverse in SLJA's Parliament.
Yeah, so I don't understand. It says the House shall debate. It's a must, it's mandatory. Then you now form the committee if there are issues arising to look at. So I don't understand what is happening. And this is not just akin to this Parliament.
Right.
You know, past Parliaments also have gone into that error. And to me, it's concerning. We elect these people to lead the way. You see, what is happening in our country is a caricature and a reflection of what is happening in Parliament. Our Parliament will actually determine how this country will go in terms of efficiency and good governance. If we're not seeing the same in Parliament, that's why we'll never see the same in our society. That's the truth. Because let me shock you in terms of even this issue of oversight. Our Parliament also has a challenge on reading. You know, I say this with all humility, not to stoke them, but that's the truth. Because we do a lot of advisory opinion and critique on bills that come before them. We find it very strange when we do our critique as legal link organization that these people did not see this thing. Or perhaps they saw it and just pretend as they did not. So it's concerning. For example, I'll give you an example. The whole debacle on the PR statutory instruments, that was so uncalled for. Because the PR Constitutional Amendments Act itself was not an entrenched clause. That's what the judges told us. So why did you take that vote and start fighting yourselves? You could have just brought that and then have a simple majority on it, which could have been secured easily by the government, at the very least. So you start asking, what is wrong with my Parliament? Didn't they understand that this was not even an entrenched clause? To now circumvent and find other ways to now fight themselves? The judges said it was not an entrenched clause. It could have been passed simply and amended simply if they had wanted to. So you start asking the question. So to me, it's very clear that they were highly political, that the things that they ought to have done on oversight, they just relegated, and we are focused on just denting them. So that's why I'm not going to be here and sing praise them. That's not the kind of CSO I am. I'm going to look at their flaws. I know they have done well on legislation, but I will simmer down on that later on and bring out the issue, because on the whole, the lapses overshadowed, the good things that they did. And we are left in awestruck to say our Parliament disappointed us in this way. Simple things that they ought to have done, debates, the auditor's report, several of them. You cannot do that, which was a public interest issue. There was no excuse for that. And I am seated here as a CSO. I am disappointed. And the people of Sierra Leone are disappointed. And I know many, it's not my wish, but many, from what we are getting from people now, will not come back by virtue of what they have done. Well, the
people will not be choosing them.
No, and I agree with you. Maybe that might save some by the parties list and the PR system that is now at hand. But trust me, let's see what happens. Because again, it's about the integrity of the institution itself. They put Parliament on the light. Okay. Tawa suffered a lot, for no just cause, because he blew the whistle. And to me, I'm disappointed. He lost his oversight position, and he was even cowed till today. So what am I saying here? Oversight was key, and they ought to have done something in that, at the very least, on some key issues. They could disagree on some other reports, but on the other report, and today, here is what is happening today. So to me, they were even, I would charge them for conspiracy. That what happened to the Consul General was sponsored by the cavalier attitude of Parliament, because they started the whole ball game. If they had taken her report serious, perhaps she would not have been where she is today.
All right. Let's bring in Lawyer Tommy in. Oversight. Few issues have been highlighted. Reports not tabled, not debated, question time promise not fulfilled. There are issues of the audit report not being debated. The Parliament goes out to oversee institutions, and at the end of the day, these reports, or some have argued these reports would be influenced. Some have coming, I mean, with some pretty good reports, but they've never been debated. And in terms of accountability and transparency, I was told if we're able to get it right in Parliament, then the state will be okay. So what is happening? What's your assessment on oversight?
I mean, clearly, without rehashing what has been said, there is a huge question mark where watching with respect to their oversight here. But I think it was the Honorable representing the APC who talked about the need to review the institutional arrangement. I think it's got to go beyond institutional arrangement to actually look at the legal framework, because let's look at the Public Accounts Committee. And I agree that in terms of the audit report, it's got to be first debated at the plenary and then hand over the issues emerging from the debate to the committee. But even that committee, right, I have always argued that you cannot have the ruling party dominating the Public Accounts Committee, or at least even chairing it. So when we're talking about institutional arrangement and even legal review, I think we should have the opposition, because let's be honest, it is the government, the ruling party, that is running the country. And if there's any negative report, right, it is basically a report on the administration. I do not, for the life of me, see politicians being willing, ruling party politicians being willing to basically wash their dirty linens in public all the time. They may do it a few times, but to be honest, a year or two to elections, they're going to start dragging feet, which is why we have all said here the Auditor General's report hasn't been debated for a few years. And perhaps the only saving grace, somebody might say, is that you have the ACC picking up some bits and pieces from the report and acting on them. But that doesn't replace the important role of Parliament in debating the report, coming up with recommendations, and making sure that MDs act on their recommendations. Because if they don't, they also have the power to bring them, to summon them to Parliament and ensure that they act on those reports. And if they don't, of course, you know, they can basically rein them in for contempt. So they have such powers. The fact that they have been failing largely to do that raises questions about the law, the institutional arrangement. But let's be honest, we've got to be serious about giving Parliament the support, the parliamentarians the support they need to perform oversight. I do not understand for the life of me that I'm going to supervise the work done by a serving government agency or ministry or the prime, and I get funded. They provide my accommodation, my bills are paid and extra. It certainly potentially colors the outcome of that investigation. Sometimes it's done even beforehand. So let us, if perhaps we have to think about outsourcing that bit of their work, the monitoring. Now there is NAMED, right? There is a National Monitoring Agency. Maybe if it costs government too much to take care of parliamentarians, and if that committee is doing some monitoring work, how can we get Parliament working with NAMED to ensure that those reports from the field, right, are submitted to Parliament? But even there, NAMED is a government agency. Yes. At the end of the day, to be honest, we have to agree on one thing. This is our country. We're all Sierra Leoneans, and the assumption is that we are all in this for the good of our country. People have got to do the right thing and ensure that, I mean, when if they allow you, Samia, all of us, and this is not just a government thing, human beings, we don't always act out of the goodness of our hearts. We act because there are potential consequences for bad behavior. That's why oversight exists, right? If politicians, if ministers, heads of agencies, departments work without any oversight, to be honest, you're just giving them a sort of carte blanche to go ahead and do whatever you want to do. There are no consequences. That's why you have all these accountability institutions, including the ACC and Parliament. So you've got to make sure that you provide Parliament the resources it needs, but parliamentarians also have got to show huge commitment. But perhaps to enhance that commitment, you've got to look at the legal framework and ensure that ruling party members of Parliament are not dominating these oversight committees. And at the end of the day, even the way The Speaker also has a huge role to play in that. The Clerk of Parliament has a role to play in that. Because ultimately, if Parliament works well, government delivers for the people. And if it's really about politics, the higher your performance rate, the better your chances are getting re-elected. So it is even, for me, it's not even politics, because it is clearly against the strategic interest of your party if you're in power and you are not doing enough to ensure that the government is delivering. And what lack of oversight does is that where government is not delivering, you're not paying attention, and ultimately it comes back to bite you. But in the interest of people, I would suggest that on oversight issues, you have such committees being headed and even dominated by opposition politicians, so that at the end of the day, that's really what you call government, a participatory government.
Could that not be seen? Could that not be seen as a dream, in the sense that the executive would eventually think that, oh, they're just going to expose our inadequacies, expose corruption.
Can I come in?
Yes, you will come in. Just allow him.
Okay, so again, we're not perfect. So there may be flaws, there may be weaknesses, but you don't come to government, you don't come to governance, you don't come to public office with an assumption that there will be many inadequacies.
Right.
There will be any mistakes, right? We come into this conversion to governance with an undertaking, an oath to serve and serve diligently. So if the opposition are leading or even dominating oversight committees, I see nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, whatever they find, let's say there's a report, that report is going to be subjected to test, to scrutiny.
Right.
They'll bring it to the public. They will say, this is what we found. And members of the public, we read the report. They will have an opportunity to test the quality or veracity of what they are claiming in that report. It's not like they're keeping on the table and saying we found this. They will authenticate the claims. But let's really go back to Parliament, review the way, the legal framework, review the structure of those committees, and indeed how Parliament works. Because I'll tell you, like I think Rashid said, this is not a new thing. And in fact, one more thing before I leave.
Yeah.
We've had all these parliamentary debates and reports, which is by all means important and necessary. But when was the last time that Parliament really acted on any of those reports or their own recommendations to the point of even getting a change of course? In other words, they may do the finding of even debating these reports. And this is not to say the fact that they have not debated these reports, it's a good thing. It's bad. No two ways about it. But sometimes even when they do, and the committee comes up with these recommendations, I do not see that follow-up action. Sometimes between the publication of that report and then the follow-up, something happens, and things just die sort of naturally. There's a huge gap that needs to be really narrowed.
Right. Quickly, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I wanted to assure my CSO brother that the way committees are set up in Parliament, they are set up principally on the strength of the political parties. So what happens is every political party either heads a committee or the membership are equally shared. For example, the current Parliament, we have like 8 or so committees, including 2 of the most important ministries in the hands of the opposition. The Ministry of Agriculture, the chairman and deputy chairman for that oversight committee is from the APC. The Ministry of Tourism, the chairman and deputy chairman for that committee is from the APC. The Committee on Labour, the chairman and deputy chairman is from the APC. The Committee on Youth, the chairman and deputy chairman is from the APC. Committee on Sports, Committee on Gender. So the way Committee on Foreign Affairs. So the way committees are set up, they are principally in the hands of, they are shared in terms of political strength.
All right.
Now to the issue of, let me just, in passing, just one line.
Quickly, please.
The issue of the deputy speaker being the chairman for the PAC. You see, sometimes when we take actions, we don't look at the full picture of the actions that we take. And when you begin to get the additional information on your action, then you begin to ask yourself, why didn't I do the needful? He brought up, he was the proponent of fighting or raising the hell on the Parliamentary Act. The Parliamentary Act, in its true picture, was also proposing a change of the management of PAC. It was not, the Parliamentary Act has not a single financial implication that Parliament is not enjoying today. Everything that is in the Parliamentary Act, we are already receiving it. Truth. We are receiving recess allowance. We are already receiving it. We received it last year. We have an increment in our city fee from 400,000 to 600,000. We are receiving already. We have already received 3 years ago or so vehicle allowance. We have already had the salary increase from 12 million to 21.5. So what the Parliamentary Act meant to do is to structure Parliament. And part of the structuring was to set up TOR for the leadership. As you see now, they are chief whip, deputy whip. There is no TOR guiding what they do. So the Parliamentary Act intends to state clearly, define clearly the responsibility of the leader.
So no new provision in terms of benefits?
There is no new provision. The only thing that is new in the Parliamentary Act, let me tell you, is bringing or taking the clerk to the level of saying, okay, a clerk that has served in Parliament for 5 years, you cannot serve as a clerk if you are not a member of Parliament in the past year. You can now benefit up to 80% of gratuity. And the Speaker, let's not forget, the Speaker is the third gentleman of the state. You don't expect him to retire and be wretched and pauper. It's not even good for the image of Sierra Leone. If you see a former Speaker of Sierra Leone,
so that's why he should retain the vehicle.
So he should retain at least one vehicle.
And get 3.
He should retain at least one vehicle. If he has one vehicle, he has a pension benefit paid to him. It is for the good.
And 3 security personnel?
It's for the good. See now what happened in McKinney. we are the most vulnerable members of Parliament. We don't have security. If I walk out of this room now, having said what I'm saying now, and somebody attack me, there's nobody to protect me.
So you want 3 security personnel?
That's the third gentleman of the state.
Okay. Yes, quickly. Yes,
first of all,
quickly.
let me do some clarification. First of all, I totally disagree with Honorable and Savakon said when he stated that the Parliamentary Act that I actually kicked against in Parliament had so many good things. For me, it is on all fours bad.
Even those you are enjoying right now as a member of Parliament,
what you they said when the clerk introduced the bill, it clearly, for me, he misled Parliament.
He did not read.
For me, no, he misled Parliament.
But you did not read.
He said what Parliament had wanted to do was to codify existing laws governing or regulating the remuneration of Parliament together with the staff. And then when you codify, it simply means taking existing laws as they are and then put them as one for the sake of easy reference. But then when you go to clause 33 of that bill, clause 33 provides a situation whereby you can come in whenever you want to and then just come and add. That's what's called. For me, that was very disingenuous. When you look at the drafting, it says by virtue of a statutory instrument, and he knows fully well that when the statutory instrument is laid before Parliament, the procedures are different from when you come with a full bill. So that's one. And then secondly, there was nothing that provided for the Speaker and the Clerk of Parliament in our existing laws as they put it in the Parliamentary Act. Is that not a new provision? That's a new provision in the law. So it is totally bad on all fours. Because now, look at the time, you are asking for the security personnel. Are the ordinary citizens not also vulnerable to security situations in this country? Then, the day before that, Parliament had already just passed the Finance Act, asking for taxes on manufacturers. And then it will appear as if you are robbing Peter to pay Paul. So for me, it is totally not in place. It is not timely. It has no bearing to. So that's one. Then secondly, I stated about the role of parliamentary leadership in addressing question time, ensuring that reports are debated on time, and then follow-ups are done. And he's saying when you say parliamentary leadership, it includes all of them. I agree. But when it comes to the cadre when it comes to authority, when it comes to responding, there are different levels. The authority of the Speaker is different from the authority, is far above the authority of the leader of government business. The authority of the leader of government business is not as the same as the leader of the opposition. The ball stops at the Speaker for him to ensure that question time see the day of the light of the day. So they all make up the leadership of Parliament, but the authority are different.
All right.
Then thirdly,
quickly, please.
He is saying committees are allocated based on the strength of parties. That's proportionally. That is the number of committees. And proportion, that is 8 or 10, 15 or 10. But when it comes to the quality or the substance of the committees, there are certain key committees, as Council was saying just now, Mr. Tommy. The Transparency Committee, the Legislative Committee, the Public Accounts Committee. As he said, we are here in Parliament for the good of the country, not. Yes, we have voted along party lines, but we are there on the assumption of for the good of the country. So if we see these as 3 key oversight committees that will help the good governance of this country, why not give them to opposition? That's what I have said. It is not only unique to this Parliament. That has been a systemic problem. That has been a systemic problem. So it goes back to the institutional arrangement of the committee situation of the oversight powers of Parliament. And he is saying, Section 93 talks about public interest. I agree. If Africell is operating against the public interest, yes. But then it will be complicated, it will be complex, and it will open a floodgate. Parliament can never be an adjudicating body. The judicial arm of the government is responsible to interpret the laws that parliaments make. It is in charge of adjudication. So I don't want to see Parliament being lawmaker as well as adjudicator.
But it's oversight.
No. The principle of separation of power.
But it's oversight. That is why in '93 we are giving the power of the High Court to someone. It's oversight.
Power.
It's not deciding the outcome.
You cannot be a lawmaker and then you want to be a
But it's oversight. It's oversight.
You cannot be a lawmaker and you want to be an adjudicator.
No, but it's oversight. That's why if you go to 96, at the end of 93, Section 93, it says Parliament has the power of the High Court to enforce the production of information.
I have a mixed impression.
All right.
Some of the bad things, that I said.
Yes.
As we speak up till now, we are yet to debate the Auditor General's report.
Right. Let's move on to representation because of time. I mean, I know part of the welfare bill comes under representation. But the issue of this bill, this welfare bill, is not only coming up now.
It is not welfare bill. It is Parliament Act.
Parliament Act 2023.
Which essentially is seeking to pave the way. For the welfare of parliamentarians.
What are we saying?
Let's put it.
We are already enjoying the things. I won't tell the public about that.
So, gentlemen, it goes back. There was a leak. Initial, not now. I think some months back.
No, it's 3 years ago.
And then you rejected it. You disclaimed. You said, "Oh, this is."
No, we didn't know about it at the time.
Yeah, but some members knew at the time. The leadership knew about it at the time, and now it's almost in different words. Now the same bill in front of us, and again you've rejected it. You've said, this in the time in battle. So let's get to it. In terms of representation, Honorable Bar, at some point when APC was leading the executive, I got summoned in Parliament because I wrote an article why I call it Constituency Development Fund. Under this regime, whilst Honorable Abbas Mundu is the speaker, I've been summoned again, by the way. I've been summoned by both parliaments.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know.
I've been summoned by both parliaments for doing my job. But if we put representation and look at the things you do, on a normal day when we vote in members of parliament, because you are our representatives, and many have said the House is not a house of technocrats. So sometimes in your constituencies, amongst your constituents, there are people who are more knowledgeable, who are more skillful and more professional in some of the areas. But when there are issues of law, pieces of legislation are open, there are agreements, it is expected that members of parliament should come to their constituencies, inform them, tell them, and they can also make inputs, and then you take that to the world. But that is not happening. So how would you assess representation?
No, I wouldn't say it is not happening.
Okay.
It is happening on a very low, well, not impressive, because I have been an MP who benefited, I think, funding from one NGO that is promoting the Criminal Procedure Act.
We did that, yeah.
Exactly. So there were selected MPs, me being a lawyer. So we took that bill to the constituents, we sought their views, they had their input. So that's one. And then even this Public Elections Act, when it was all over the place, as an opposition MP, because you know we are faced with challenges, you guys are not paying attention to the Public Elections Act, possibly these acts are. So we took it upon us to ensure that we seek the views of our constituents on the provisions of the Public Elections Act vis-a-vis this PR issue. So it is happening on a very low scale. But that is the problem. I think it all boils down to what I'm saying, that the institution is set up. As an MP, we don't have offices assigned to each and every MP
Well, you are
in
giving
Parliament.
money. You are giving money to.
Hold it. We are not assigned research assistants.
All of those are welfare issues.
No, hold it. No, hold it.
Go ahead.
Hold it. We do not have well-established library that will match the current trend. And the way bills are coming to Parliament, you have this bill today, within the same week, in less than 3 days, you have another bill, and you need time. And then so, because this political socialization, the intellectual capacity of our constituents, most times people are disinterested in facts. They are disinterested. When you take these issues, they see them as empty issues. Because according to our political socialization, what they expect you to come, do bridges for us, do hospitals for us. When you ask them to come, so it is a matter of time. The level of the political socialization of the cell unions, for now, it is not as sophisticated as in the Western democracies. It is a matter of time. But that is what is expected of an MP. You are not the Mr. Know-all.
Right.
So, for instance, if I am a lawyer, there is a bill that borders on agriculture and finance, I'll have to seek the expertise or advice of a financial consultant or financial specialist or an agriculturist. So, but I need time. I need time. So it all boils to say, because the executive arm, that is why I'm a proponent of a situation whereby you get MPs and even councillors to participate in budgeting. You get them to have their input. When you get them to have their input, overall,
You've gotten the people too.
yes, no, that has never been a model in Africa. But I'm proposing that whenever you want to budget, get the MPs and the councillors. You start it at the ward level. So overall, the people you know, this is the role of the central government and this is the role of Parliament. So as far as getting constituents to contribute or to participate in the formulation of bills, in making their input into the processing of bills, for now, honestly, it will not be achieved as expected. But it is there, though it is not impressive.
Honorable Tawa.
I think representation as prescribed by Section 97 and as performed by this 5th Parliament, I think we have done well.
In what sense?
In a sense that it is not unique to Sierra Leone. Even in America, when they block the debt ceiling, it's not as if they will go back to their constituents and tell them that we are going to block the debts, that we are going to stop government from being functional. Sometimes our work, we are caught in between a point where we are between the rock and the hard place. There are times exigency would require us to act for and on behalf of our constituents. Additionally, I will give you my example. I will give you my experience. I wrote letters. Normally, I write letters to my constituents. Someone in meeting, particular word. I would write like 100, 200, 300 letters. I have my small office at home. Even when they said they give me the money, I took them to that office, I showed them. But I'm not collecting rent for that from whatever fund that was allocated in 2018. But I have my office. I do my clerical and whatever office duty. You write letter to them. You will be disappointed to realize that you sent out 300 letters. You would only see 10 people coming. 10. And even when you go now beyond the traditional responsibility of representation to talk or to bring the bills or the document to debate, or to ask their opinion, they will not show up. But even if you take now bridges that is not your responsibility, you go to their community to build bridge, you will be shocked that nobody in that community will participate. You will have to pay. I have gone through it. You will have to pay. I have a team. I have an assembled team called Wambone that is discharging all of this development that you see I do every day, or I do every other month or every other year. So the challenge is, what happens with representation is not unique to Sierra
So what
Leone.
is responsible for the lack of interest of your constituents in what you do?
It is not lack of interest of our constituents. If you call your constituents today, that government has given me 18 million, I want to share it, you would have like 1,000 constituents coming for that money. But if you tell them that we have a meeting, let's come and discuss on the gender equality and women's empowerment bill, you will be shocked that only 2 women will come. 2. And the others will be seated at the markets. You go there, hey, please come. Now come for this meeting. Oh, they can't. They will not show up. That is how difficult it is. Sometimes, some of us, we have the benefit of hindsight. Ibrahim was my constituent. I don't know whether he has moved or not.
I have moved.
He has moved. Sometimes we engage. I will meet him at some informal places and we'll discuss. He will give me his own ideas, his own input, his own take of certain issues. I will note them. And when I come to Parliament, I will say some of them. I will say them maybe differently. When we were doing the repeal of the 1965 Public Order Act and the death penalty, Lord Rashid, he was there, I was in Parliament. He brought barrage of documents. I took them home. I read virtually all of them. I could not read all because it was a compendium. A whole research. Different, you cannot read everything. You don't have a research assistant. Legally, they have big documents. They don't come with small documents. You don't know them. So you don't have a research assistant. So you are constrained to read submission from Legal Link. You have submission from CAL. You have submission from 50-50. So you have to share your time so as to ensure that there is fairness. So in what we do, as prescribed by Section 97, that will represent not only our constituents, but also the people of this country. I tell you, we are doing a fantastic job with representation because our people are not interested. Let me tell you, if you speak all the English in Parliament, if you don't build that bridge in your constituency, they don't want you. You can speak all the English that Lawyer Rashid knows. You can speak all the English that Ibrahim has learned from all his travels across the world, and all his studies and all his academic credentials that he has gained across the world, and all the training he has attended. Let me tell you, they don't want him. Because it is not his English that they are interested in. That is how disinterested they are with representation. So as members of Parliament, we are constrained to represent our people, to imagine for them, to reinvent ourselves, and to come to Parliament and bring out the issues that actually affect our constituency.
So you think and act on behalf of them?
That's what they do. That's what we do. Because, for example now, if there is a bill on environment, I know the critical issues at Kaningo. I know the critical issues at Pentagon. I know what happened when the mudslide struck. So what I do is sometimes you engage some of them on the side, one-on-one. There are some, you talk to them, they will be interested. I have a friend, a brother sort of. He's running a bar. It's called Musdoba. When we were about introducing the tobacco bill, I went to him, I called him, that we are going to have a bill on tobacco that would also frown at shisha. And this year, people are smoking shisha. So you must ensure that if they want to smoke shisha, they have to go inside. If they do it outside, then you are in conflict with the law. And if anybody, any law enforcement agency or law enforcement agents come here and arrest you, then you would have put me in a difficult spot. We engage. He gave me his own input. When we went for the bill, I'm a member of the legislative committee. We discussed it. We found ways to protect our people. So in representation, I'm sure we are doing a fantastic job. I will tell you, this Parliament,
given the prevailing circumstances.
Exactly.
Right,
when it comes to representation and lawmaking, we would have nothing less than 90.
Yes.
Honorable, right?
He's an honorable man. He's from the court.
Well, you know the decision or the position of the speaker calling.
Well, since my power is waning now, I think I'll pass some of it to him.
All right, Lawyer Rashid, the issue of representation. You're a constituent in your constituency. So share your experience with us and how effective that is.
Yes, so again, on this one, sadly enough, I'm going to disappoint my honorable. I would also feel them on this one. You know, representation is about many things. First, it's about standing on the side of people in Parliament on key issues of national interest. Let them judge themselves if they have really stood on the side of the people. Because to me, in analysis, it's about largely what their party is saying. They are so over loyal to their parties, to the extent that they don't even hear what people are saying. And this is for both sides, APC and SLJA, very loyal people. So I'm sure the PR system will work well for them. It will work well for them, because that's what exactly it means: being loyal to your party and ignore the people's interests and their views. So in that note, we've seen many issues in Parliament that are people-centered. And how much struggle you can see to even get it on the plenary to discuss it. All right? So to me, in that regard, they have not been productive. Also on the issue of now, even knowing what the people want. So now here is the bigger picture. Going to the people, understanding them, having town hall meetings. We hardly see people, parliamentarians have town hall meetings. We hardly. All right, maybe that would be too much. One-on-one discussion with intellectuals, you know, in those communities like Tawa was alluding to. You could meet people like us who are CSOs in those communities. What are your viewpoints? Empirical surveys. It's not a niche for my country. We don't even hear of anything on empirical surveys. It's okay, the study was done. This is a survey report by my community, and these are the facts as we move the effects we have on my community, and so and so. Empirical studies. These are the new normal in terms of progressive democracies. When they now go to lawmaking, they do. And then let's be clear, it's not really too much of money, Samuel. Let me tell my parliamentarians, it's not too much. It's really a facade to say money, money, money. No, I'm in a community now. I'm not a rich person. But I noticed that the drive to the community is bad. There's a huge drive. Samuel, with a determination, the someone I'm getting, I have improved on the drive alone. I didn't need anybody to do that. I'm not a parliamentarian. There was water issue also. I have a well. I connected my well and put it in a public place outside, a tap. And I'm supplying them. So these are some small things that parliamentarians can do and make a huge difference. You need to get the wealthy. All right. So now I'm working with some youth also to do some other roles that are also very important.
Your standard is above the average parliamentarian. You are a lawyer.
See now.
You are
chief
executive officer of Legal.
That's a very debatable.
It is not. I know the life of an average parliamentarian.
You just told us here that. You just told us that you have been paid over 20-something million. I don't get that salary. I don't get that.
That is 10%
my job as a lawyer is not a fixed one. I can go to the office and don't get clients. All right. But what I'm saying is, when there is a heart and a will, these things can be done with love and passion. All right. And what you do, you now make the people understand that you are seeking and representing them. You understand their issues. So when you go to parliament, you can now be a voice for them. And there are a few exceptions. Trust me, he is one of them. All right. And of course, he also is one of them. We've seen how much they have taken development to their constituencies and how much lawyers, you know, have been accorded and regarding same. So today, Lumley area, people are happy for him, for what he is doing. So we can do this. And then the bulk of the majority, people don't even know them. So representation also, as Samuel, is about knowing what the people want and standing for what the people want in parliament.
All right.
It's not a big deal.
Let me ask you.
So I fail them again on that.
Let me ask Lawyer Tommy this question.
Yes.
Now to talk about representation in this context, it is what we get from our members of parliament as constituents. It is. I have to go to school, maybe to college. I've not paid my fees. I have to call Tawa. You're a member of parliament. I'm able to pay college fee, so you go able to help me. Literally, when someone wants to get married, I mean, all of these things. These are what we perceive to be representation. But again, where are we cultivating these ideas? You see, during campaigns, when these members they come to us, they tell us all what they're going to do for us. Little did they know that they do not have the mandate to do so as prescribed by law. But then, when they go in and now the resources do not flow as they were expecting, then it becomes clear that so how do we deal with that perception as against what really representation is all about?
I think there is need for knowledge on both sides, on the side of parliamentary experience as well as members of the public. I think we have to help citizens unlearn and relearn, but also help parliamentarians couch their messages in ways that do not get them making unrealistic statements. But let's be fair to members of parliament. Whilst they are in free time for the most part working in parliament, they have people who wish to replace them in parliament in those communities, right? Doing some work. You know what I'm talking about? They are fixing roads, they are, doing cry-bearing, they are contributing to wedding ceremonies and all that. So they try to respond exactly to what is happening at the community level. Because for the everyday person in a poverty-stricken country that we found ourselves, right? And this notion that parliamentarians or politicians are there for themselves, right? They make money. My own benefit as a citizen is not a good law. I mean, what is a good law for the everyday person who's struggling to earn out a living? The good law is for you, the elites, those who interact with those laws. For him or her, it's about what comes to me directly. If I get burying, you go get burying. That's the problem. That's the pressure that our parliamentarians have to live with, which is why, to be fair to them, they find it very difficult to go to these communities. I mean, imagine if every resident was on the level as Rashid. These guys wouldn't be scared to go to their communities. But I swear, they go to their communities, a person cough, now MP owes them to go. So that is part of the reason why they don't go there. But that's not to excuse their failure to use alternative means of engaging. Sierra Leone is blessed with so many radio stations, including community radio. So parliamentarians have got to think of creative ways of engaging members of the public, but also their constituents. For example, if you represent in the East or Western rural, man, there are radio stations that are very active. You can use that on, you get some MOU. The parliament can lead efforts like that. Engages radio station managers, get an MOU so that you get, even if it's 30 minutes, you do Parliament at Work, 30 minutes update, right? Every week, you do that. It's a way of engaging. I think this idea that you have to go, meet people physically is not even practicable. How many people can you possibly meet in your constituency? It's not possible. So they've got to think about creative ways of engaging. Thankfully, there's social media. Okay, penetration is increasing. But it's also an alternative means of engagement, right? I mean, the good thing, we have to give it to them. We saw a lot more openness and willingness to engage with civil society. There's this Parliament civil society platform engaging. And if you go to Parliament website now, you see everything that they do, right? In terms of transparency, the laws, their debates, everything is online. But think of the access to internet, access to smartphone or mobile devices, it's really, really low, which is why they've got to find ways of engaging members of public, but most importantly, to distill the many, many challenges that exist at community level. So this is the thing. Parliamentarians don't have the money to dig wells or fix roads, right? They don't. What they can do, and this is where oversight is critical, the most important law, well, not the most important law, the one law that Parliament makes every year, and which is very important, is a budget, right? National Appropriation Act. That is how parliamentarians can also represent their constituencies. So if you come from a constituency where you realize that education is a problem, access, roads, it's a problem. When we are debating in Parliament, you want to know from that Minister of Finance, what is in this for my constituency, going for what is in this for my district, or particularly the area that I care about. That is where parliamentary representation also matters in terms of allocation of resources. If you don't get to do that during that debate, and that's where Parliament, Rashid was talking about other functions of Parliament. If Parliament doesn't approve the money, not even the president, where there is a certain percentage that you can use above what is approved, but still it is very restricted. But if Parliament doesn't approve, government doesn't function. So that's the most important power that you have, to control the pulse and represent your people where it matters. So I just thought I should make the point that they've got to learn new ways of engaging, so that members of the public know what they do.
All right. Let me just run through a few messages quickly. We have hundreds of them. Unfortunately, time will never permit me to go through all of your messages. So forgive me, I'm going to only take a few. Paul Kanu is saying this has been the worst parliament from its inception to its conclusion. It started on the wrong footing with the installation of an illegal speaker to the last day kicking out of an illegal welfare bill. Shame on you guys. The removal of parliamentarians to make meaningful decisions is such a result. Abdullah Hadi Sanko is saying, Gustavo Kanu is saying, only the white people could save. Okay, that's not what we're discussing here, please. Great speech, Mr. Tommy. Thanks, Matthew Muke is saying, okay, I'm skipping. The rationale for the formation was never hard. Here too, okay, that's not so clear. Suleiman Diallo is saying nothing good comes out of this so-called House of Parliament. Salona MPs, they are the most Okay, that's too harsh. I can go through. My child is watching too. Isata Vandi. This is great. Okay. So many messages, but I'm only going to take those that speak to the issues, with civility. Why is this parliament still operating? Florence Wike is asking. And she's saying they should have closed parliament now for the campaign to go on for the election, June 24th. The grant is saying oversight is where this current parliament failed woefully. Parliamentarians put party and self-interest over the masses they are supposed to represent. David Stanley Coker is saying, I love how Honorable Tawa tries to be frank, honestly. If parliamentarians could release their party lens and see things from a national perspective, I am sure that our nation will notice transformation. Don't wonder, this was the most dormant parliament. On had just been they collect money from MDAs and left the MDA them for malfunction. Take Natcom, Seratel, etc. for example, right? Edwin Ajone is saying our parliament is a scam since its resolution, and they have the guts and the boldness to ask for such a welfare bill. These guys, and they try for test the water. Usman Fofana is saying anti-corruption needs to call. Okay, I don't get it. Daniel Sheriff is saying Honorable Tawa is professionally debunking statements made by Honorable Ba. One, parliament receives money from MDAs in which Amadou Ba said he is not in the know. Section 93 of our constitution gives parliament the right to bring on board people that are dealing with public interest, example, the mobile networks. Honorable Ba said parliament should not call those private institutions in parliament, but rather the regulators. More to come. Bashiru locks in. I'm going to take at most 5 more messages, guys, because of time. Bashiru locks in Mustafa Follower is in one of parliament's main roles is to examine and challenge the work of the government through questioning ministers, debating committee work. Making laws. The central role of government is to make laws as well as making changes to existing legislations, which our Sierra Leone Parliament is challenging on how to make good laws for the betterment of the poor masses. Secondly, parliamentary sovereignty is the principle of the Sierra Leone Constitution. It makes Parliament the supreme legal authority in Sierra Leone, which can create or end any law. But are they given the political will? No relations with other institutions. Parliament is an essential part of Sierra Leone's politics and interacts on a daily basis with a number of important institutions which fight for themselves. Generally, Sierra Leone's parliament under SLPP failed woefully. Bash from Tunisia. James St. Pratic is saying, okay, I'm not going to go through that. That matter is under investigation. The next parliament will be on a proportional representation system. Members of parliament are no longer accountable to their constituencies or constituents anymore. Their loyalty is now to their parties. My question is, will the next parliament have the interests and concerns of the people? Abubakar Rashid is asking there. Until and unless the Speaker and Clerk of Parliament remain neutral before we can have a well-functional Parliament. Hence, they belong to a party that is in power. Their loyalties would always be their party. Olatunji Mesa is saying, start jailing those individuals violating the laws and executing them to the highest level. We would start seeing changes overnight. The day when public servants are held accountable and held to the law, and they are made examples out of themselves for the greater good of the country, then you would see the change of saloon. Okay, I think I have to hold the messages there. We have so many of them, unfortunately, guys. Time is not our best of friend at the moment. So, Honorable Ba, let's get to the final rule, where you've scored. Where you, yeah, the issue of lawmaking. I know you want to make some comments, but let me allow you quickly. Let me allow you quickly.
And as I was saying, you know, governance is a dynamic thing. We must be innovative. As I stated earlier on, to my mind, I think the budgeting pattern in this country needs to be looked at properly, because as a representative of the people, contextually, the constituents expect us to be the ministers of trade, the ministers of agriculture, the ministers. And so that is where the issue of knowledge comes in. So if we are looking at it contextually, because as a leader or as a representative, you need to look at your people, understand them, because you're seeking to satisfy them and to work towards their aspirations. So if we've realized that people expect MPs to be the bridges of development, let us get a system whereby when we are budgeting in the health sector, for the health sector, educational sector, we begin to budget at ward level. When you get the councillor and then the MP to sit, and then you begin to plan at that level, this is innovative. You begin to say, okay, there are 446 wards, and then there are 132 constituencies. When you take all of this collectively, you have the national budget. So when they come to Parliament, each and every ward must have had their aspirations catered for in that particular budget. As opposed to the situation that obtains now. You get the Minister of Development, Minister of Planning, the Minister of Finance. Yes, you've seen them going to various places in the medium term, long term planning. For me, that's just in the air. Then somebody said, refers to that now that we are having the proportional representation, and then parliamentarians will not be responsive to their constituents. My brother or my sister, the functions of Parliament will never change. They are still the same. We are expected to represent our people. We are expected to, people expect us to
but vertical accountability will not be there.
No,
that's what the text is referring to.
They're missing the point. They're missing. As we speak for now, let us say now. Well, for my party, we are having the primaries to get members of Parliament and local councillors for the local council. Yeah, because it is provided for in our constitution that the party shall nominate its MPs and councillors, but who shall be elected? And then we have our elections. We'll be having elections on Wednesday. Okay. So we'll go to the ward, you have the elections at the ward level, you have them. So it still remains the same. It is just a matter of changing the name. Right. So people are apprehensive. The reason being, it was what happened in Parliament. This forms part of what is ugly and bad about Parliament. Somebody stated, indeed, from the inception, the installation of the Speaker, I have it on my notes here. The way and manner the Speaker was installed was totally wrong. Okay. So there are so many good things about Parliament for which both the ruling party and the opposition party have been collaborating. For instance, the cybercrime. And one of them, the cybercrime law, and then the criminal procedure, the repeal of the criminal libel law, and the Gender Empowerment and Women's Empowerment Act. There are so many of them, but there are instances. Let us take, for instance, the issue of the proclamation about the census. It is nothing to write home about. Let us take a situation about when the regulations were tabled, the peer regulations were tabled. That's nothing to write home about. So there are so many things that have unfortunate trajectory. But overall, the representation side, my brother, we have to contextualize it. So far as me, on my own, I have represented my people fully. At least I can give myself 90%.
Honorable, we enter our content lawmaking.
Before I talk about lawmaking, let me clarify the issue of the installation of the Speaker. I think that has been the longest debate since the inception of this Parliament. You know, everything that happens have a context, and we should not lose sight of the context. The context is the fourth Parliament, in which the APC has 72 members. 2/3 of that Parliament supposed to be 74, minus paramount chief members of Parliament. They had 72 members. They deliberately amended the Constitution to make the issue of Speaker and Deputy Speaker, amending Section 79 and 80, becomes political. The minute it is political, you expect political gymnastics. The minute it is political, you expect the ruling party to try as much as possible to have the third gentleman of the state. Because let's not forget, it has a political implication. If the president and vice president is not in the country, the next person in line is the Speaker. So, had it been the way it were,
I do not want to leave an opposition.
had it been the way it were, when you have senior members of the judiciary, being nominated by the Judicial Service Commission, or whatever, recommended to the president from among that list appoint one of them as Speaker, then you begin to talk about having a fair umpire. you begin to talk about having the
requirement for election.
The requirement for election was done.
The previous requirement that does not obviate the requirement, because that either way
the requirement for election was done.
Whether it was from Parliament or from the judiciary, there was the requirement for election.
But the requirement for election was met.
No,
an election took place.
It was, first of all, don't forget the background. MPs were illegally removed.
MPs were not illegally removed. MPs were injuncted by the court.
Setting the stage for the election.
Thank God 2 lawyers are here.
All right,
MPs were injuncted by the court. And the MPs that were injuncted by the court, including one SLPP MP, did not take part in the election of the speaker. That is the context.
Proportionally, there are 10 of us, 10 of us, and they have 1.
So let's leave the issue of speaker and installation out of the conversation.
Quickly, lawmaking.
The issue of members of parliament being accountable to their people. The way our constitution was designed, whether, like he said, also we are going to have primaries for both councillors, MPs. In the Western area alone, we have 48 applicants aspiring for 16 seats. And we are going to submit twice the number. So even if we submit twice the number, what we have now is 3 times the number. So it means every constituency, save for constituency 132, my constituency, every constituency have at least 2-3 people coming up for that seat. It is only constituency 132 that has 1 applicant. And that is the Honorable Ibrahim Traore. I am the only applicant with constituency 132. Every other constituency, some constituency have 3-4. So they are going to have primaries. But the way our constitution was designed, you look at section 77, you realize that going against your party that did not vote for you, in 3 separate motions or 3 separate issues on the floor of parliament, your party can remove you.
That's the law.
That is how the constitution was designed. So this issue about
whether PR or constituency based.
PR or constituency is the same. Your party can still remove you. So now to lawmaking, I will tell you, I think we have been unfairly treated by the civil society organization, I will say, because if we have 3 core functions and you give us a pass mark according to them in just 1, then you're saying for 5 years we've done nothing. But what I will say, what I will submit, is that even in heaven, for what the Quran and the Bible tells us, is that they are going to put everything that you've done on the face of this earth on a scale. And when you put the scale does not only weigh one side. So it would mean by the time they get to the scale themselves, and put our inputs on representation, like they have already said, most of us, except for a few members of parliament that have never, there's not a member of parliament that have not spoken. Everyone must have attempted to speak at least once or twice. So in terms of development, if you take development as a broader angle of representation, I will tell you every member of parliament in that parliament will have above 60. Right. There is not a member of parliament in that parliament that has not either constructed a bridge, maybe in Kailau or some other place, Bondo Bush, or in some other peculiar areas, maybe Waterwell. But the pressure on the expectation of members of parliament is so much that it is only God and His mercy that is seeing us and our family live every day. Because you wake up in the morning, there are people in your doorstep. So for me, I would use that area, the portion of talking about lawmaking, because it is our best, whether I talk about it or not. Everybody knows that in lawmaking, you can even give us on the head. You can even give us on the head. So the point is, like Tommy said, it's about learning and unlearning, but it doesn't matter. The idea of the Constitution of 1978 that puts members of parliament as ministers would always continue to filter from generation to generation, and they will always continue to expect members of parliament to be schools.
All right. Rashid?
On lawmaking.
Yes, please.
Yes,
on lawmaking. Go ahead. Yes. Go right ahead.
I will give them a pass, but not an excellent pass. Now, I will tell you why.
Why? Quickly.
Yes, I'll tell you why. You see, okay, let's look at somebody lost the past, which are very revolutionary. I have some on the help. The Absolute Penalty Act, Criminal Law, the GWA Act, Public Education Act, the IMC Act, Land Commission Act, the Customary Land Rights Act. Awesome. So let me tell you why I'm not going to give them an excellent pass. You see, many of these laws.
1 to 10, where would you put them?
I'll give them 6. Many of these. I'll tell you why. Yes, I'll tell you why. Many of these laws. Yes, a B. It's a good one. Many of these laws are not self-driven. You see, for me, I'm a lecturer. For me to grade you and get you excellent, I must see the effort you make. These are largely politically driven laws. The government drove them. It's hard to see these people sit down and say, in a Baptist way, you know what, SCP, what is happening in our country? Let's generate a law. You discuss internally.
Private member.
Let them point a few. This is the point I'm saying. All of these key laws we are driven by the government, by MDAs, by the AG's office. So don't tell me I'm going to give you an excellent grade. I will not. I'm a lecturer. I didn't pass you mark because I want to pass you mark. You must earn it. So yes, they passed this one because of the good things laws that they made in their only two when it came before them. But in the USA, many of the issues are driven internally. Congress, by partisan issues. They force the government to agree to the things that they want. By having the laws and passing it and then now saying to the president, whether elected or not, you pass this law.
All right.
So to me, that is exactly what we want to see. Our parliament should drive this change internally. Motivated laws coming from them. And not just allowing the government to just send it to them and they have nothing to do other than just to let's pass. And they want us to come and give them excellent grade. No, I'll give them a pass because they made some effort in having it done. But largely driven by political parties and not necessarily by themselves.
Quickly, your final bite.
No, I'm going to give them an excellent grade.
Okay. So Tommy helps you guys.
Because I'm not a lecturer. I feel sorry for Rashid's students. They must have a tough job. But but Rashid makes a good point, and it is really a constitutional point, because if you take a look at our constitution, members of parliament really should be the ones initiating lawmaking. But over time, I think we have all come to accept that the legislative policy has to be driven by the executive arm, it's approved by cabinet, it's all of those consultations. Sometimes it is only sometimes when civil society or NGOs are involved that we really try to get pre-legislative consultation before the actual pre-legislative consultation, because we don't want the bill to go to parliament and then get some kind of rejection from parliamentarians. So that's a new angle and it's a legitimate one, and I am hoping, this conversation, it's taking place maybe 2 weeks, 2 weeks before parliament is dissolved. Yes, for the next parliament, I hope that we'll get some more progressive minds, including the two members of parliament with us here, to think about initiating laws or bills themselves and drive it, so that when you leave parliament, this is the point. Really, when you talk about legacy, often in this country, when we talk about legacy, we often talk about legacy of our president and the legacy of the president. No. Members of parliament can leave legacies, the laws that you pioneer, that you push.
Yes.
You come and say, listen, I'm very interested in accountability. There is a gap. There is something that can push. You lobby across party lines, right? You get consensus. You have people in the US Congress who have been there for how many years? 20, 30, 40 years. They tell you these were the laws that I pushed. That's the idea. Nothing precludes you from doing that. Whether you call it private members bill or whatever nomenclature you give it, partisan bill, but it's about your own ideas based on what you have observed, your lived experiences or the concerns of members of the public, or the gaps you see in our laws, the gaps you see even in our governance architecture. You come and introduce your own bill, and we remember you. Tower law. Something like that.
Yes.
That's the idea. But regardless of that, again, they have to unlearn and learn new things, but I'm not going to downgrade them for that. Just quickly explain to you. Again, we talked about lawmaking. Yes, I say you passed that excellently, but I think there's also the point about the fact that we are willing to engage with civil society, your openness, your transparency, the proactive disclosure. Those are all things we have not been able to rate on those things, but those are all things that I think are brilliant about this parliament, which is not to say that you didn't do badly on the issues of accountability and oversight.
All right, as we draw down the contest, let me just read 2 messages. One from Honorable Bernadette Lai, who says she's currently in the UK but following the debate. My question is, show me one African parliament where the speaker is not an elected parliamentarian but a retired judge. Why should Sierra Leone be an exception? Let's maintain separation of powers. We should imbibe in all duty bearers patriotism, which is the most lacking. And Franklin Manley Spain is saying, Samuel, why are the parliamentarians responsible for providing water and road and seemingly other public services? When did they become service providers? What's going on with the various public service institutions? Do they not have budgetary provisions to provide such services to the public? We still have a long way to go then if after 60 years plus of independence, we're still talking about such infantile matters. Unfortunately, that's where we would have to end today's debate. We do not have time. Many thanks to Lawyer Ibrahim Tom, who's fasting but made it to the studio. Thank you very much. Many thanks to Lawyer Rashid Dumbuya. It's always a pleasure having you here, and to the 2 members of Parliament, the politicians. Both of them are fasting as well. But thank you very much for taking your time to come and answer to the call of your people, because I represent your people. Thank you very much. Honorable, we went to our concern, Honorable Alpha Amaduba. All right. Until we meet again, the show has been AYV on Sunday. My name is Samuel Weisberg, and up next, AYV Prime Time News. Take care of yourself and have a lovely night.